Nearly 2 weeks since landfall, and Hurricane Michael's shadow still casts itself on the back roads across North Florida. We're still hours away from the Florida Panhandle, but Michael's fingerprints are smeared along every stretch of this old Florida countryside. Crumpled trees tossed into piles of debris are filled with family treasures that have become hurricane roadkill on the side of the road. As we pull into Mexico Beach, those fingerprints look a lot more like sucker punches. Actually, it looks like we've just stumbled into a war zone. And we have. We don't search for long before we run into Tiffany Sipe and her incredible story of survival.
It's a nightmare. Pictures do not do justice. You got to be here, feel it. You know, you got the heat, you got the bugs, you got the looters, you got how am I going to get a hot meal? We're thankful we have one hot meal a day. You know, MREs, raviolis, that's our best friends right now.
Survival mode has kicked in for Tiffany and most of the people living in this hurricane war zone. Hurricane Michael barreled through this proud fishing community on October 10th. And while there has been some progress made since then, the destruction still feels so fresh. The smell of mangled trees, rotting marine life, and natural gas fills the salty air as fire alarms eerily chirp from fractured homes off in the distance. Smashed streetlights litter just about every corner, and that means it takes hours to travel across this crippled community. There's so much confusion, so many people want in, and so many people want out, and there's so little direction either way. The tension is palpable, and you're warned to stay off the roads at night, but that's hard to do when simple tasks like getting from point A to point B can literally take half a day. Most businesses are operating in cash only, and a hot meal? Well, that's hard to come by within an hour from here.
Yesterday, we were out in Panama City looking and talking to survivors that rode out the storm. We heard incredible stories of survivorship and looters that came into people's homes and were trying to steal things just hours after Michael moved away. We also found people that drove over 30 miles, in some cases over an hour, just to find food and water.
We soon meet Alicia Peterson at a makeshift insurance village, but the only item on her agenda on this day is to find dog food for her two sweet pups, Coco and Buddy. Alicia rode out the hurricane in her small trailer about 30 miles north of Panama City in Bayou George. She says at one point, she had no idea if she was going to make it out alive.
We actually had to take the mattress out of our bedroom. I was like, because that's the only thing I think of. Like, I treated it as a tornado warning. We just took the mattress and put it over us. So I was like, that's the best we can do. We can't leave. We don't know what's going on outside. We didn't even know there might be a tornado as well. Yeah. So we just did the best we
could. No tornadoes were officially reported in the Panhandle, but the intense 155-mile-per-hour Category 4 winds did produce damage similar to an EF3 tornado. Metal was easily twisted and bent like clay, and even solid brick structures were reduced to rubble. More than 90% of the trees were destroyed in the immediate area of Hurricane Michael's path. Down power lines are laced across the Florida Panhandle, which is equally dangerous to navigate, especially at night. Andrew Harris grew up in the Cove. It sits just east of downtown Panama City. It was once a pristine neighborhood rich with history dating back to the early 1900s. Hurricane Michael changed all of that when it came to town. Andrew came home yesterday for the first time, but he couldn't even find his way home.
So it's pretty bad. And like I said, I came in Tuesday night about 6 o'clock, right about sunset, and I didn't know where I was. I drove past it, and I mean, there's nowhere you couldn't put me in this neighborhood that I couldn't just immediately say, oh, that's so-and-so's house. That's, there's Matt lives right across the street. I didn't know where I was. So it's really bad.
But that's only the beginning of just how hard it is to pick up the pieces in a hurricane-ravaged city. Stories of people being held at gunpoint for gas and breaking into homes while people are still in them are starting to surface. And hurricane survivors say they're having a hard time finding ways to stay safe. Tomorrow, on day 2 on our special coverage of Surviving Michael, we travel into some of the hardest hit places in Panama City. a city living on the edge since Michael came to town. For My Radar, I'm meteorologist Leslie Hudson. It's day 2 inside Michael's mayhem, and it's truly a 4-dimensional experience. Sight, sound, smell, and touch firing on all cylinders. You see overwhelming devastation along every stretch of Mexico Beach. So much so, it's hard to take it all in. You hear a constant cadence of police sirens, first responders, and home alarms that dangled from shattered homes. You smell rotting dead fish. Pools of raw sewage and ruptured gas lines fill the air in the hardest hit areas. And you touch broken glass, mangled home appliances, and severed wood with thousands of nails underneath your feet as you stumble around the epicenter of Michael's fury. But there's a fifth sense, a sense of fear, anxiety, and exhaustion all rolled into one as hurricane survivors struggle to gain some type of forward momentum.
Very horrifying and exciting, and every emotion in your body was touched that day. So, I mean, it was just unbelievable.
Hurricane Michael was the fiercest hurricane to hit Florida in over 80 years. Nearly 750,000 homes and businesses were without power throughout Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. A mandatory curfew from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. is helping to control some of the chaos. But large chunks of the Panhandle are heavily damaged, in particular Panama City. Traffic has become such a problem, officials say it's slowing recovery and restoration efforts because crews simply can't get into the hardest hit areas. In the heart of Panama City sits a popular marina that housed nearly 300 yachts and boats. Gary Cooper lived in a high-rise just steps away from the Gulf Shore where Michael's deadly eye came in.
This is my first hurricane I ever went through, and I've been here for 26 years now, but we never had a direct hit. So we had them offshore, and we had 25-foot waves here, and we had some storms, but nothing like this, of course, and the marina was a prime spot, and we knew it was going to get hit.
The lack of fundamental needs like power, AC, and clean drinking water are starting to frazzle already frayed nerves. Power crews are in overdrive trying to rebuild Panama City's electrical infrastructure. New transformers and main power lines are getting customers ready for power when they can accept it. But the damage is so extensive, especially in the older parts of Panama City, roughly 50% of the customers still can't accept power, even if it was restored.
Here in Panama City, there's little power villages that are all over the city. Now, these crews are working 24/7. They're working 12 hours on, 12 hours off to try and get this city back up and running. Now, the only thing they can't do at night is clear the debris from the power lines. It's too dangerous to do it in no light. But these guys are out clearing debris, trying to get folks back up and running, and it is a tall order.
The level of Michael's destruction and its long reach are important parts of learning from this rare and powerful hurricane. Coming up on day 3 of surviving Michael, we take a look at Michael's intricate yet intense storm structure and look for clues that detail the catastrophic wind and storm surge signatures. On special assignment, I'm meteorologist Leslie Hudson for My Radar. Michael's storm surge was textbook. And Michael's wind looked a lot more like it came from a massive tornado with its eerily similar EF3 type damage. Hurricane Michael blurred the lines between surge and wind, making it tough to distinguish between the two. Damage was so extensive, so expansive, so ferocious, it will take years of research to define. Before Michael, Mexico Beach was known as the Mayberry of the Sea. But Michael changed all of that for so many, including Jimmy Newsom, who called this place home for nearly 34 years.
Well, when I saw the hurricane coming in, I've sit through one down here before. I knew to get out. And I left. I went back to Georgia and waited. This is the first day I've been back since the hurricane. First day back.
Wow.
And I thought I could do something, but after looking at the house, it's gone. There's nothing to do.
Michael did what seldom other hurricanes have ever done before. It intensified as it made landfall. Michael left many historic firsts and powerful signatures across the Florida Panhandle and beyond.
Sometimes it wasn't apparently clear whether we had to kind of look through things and investigate to determine whether the damage we saw was from the ocean, surge, or from wind. Now, of course, with surge, we'll look for the high water marks, and if we find one, then everything above that is obviously wind. So that's the easy part. You see a different kind of damage with the water. The water will tend to bend things as opposed to break them.
Hurricane Michael enters the history books as the third strongest hurricane based on pressure to ever make landfall in the continental U.S. in modern recorded history. It was the worst hurricane on record for the Florida Panhandle and one of the worst ever in Georgia and Alabama as it continued to deliver a deadly blow as it charged north and east. 60 miles north of the Panhandle in Marietta, Florida, there was substantial damage throughout the city. Michael's northern eye wall snapped trees in one direction, then as the southern eye wall came in, trees were snapped in the other. Experts see striking similarities between Hurricane Michael and Hurricane Hugo. Both were powerful hurricanes that maintained strength well inland.
I'm standing on the nerve center of where Hurricane Michael roared on shore. Now, as you know, the winds were estimated at over 155 miles an hour. The Weather Service thinks that gusts here could be well over 175 miles an hour when all the research is done. It's hard to find a home around here that withstood that immediate storm surge of 9 to 14 feet. It's intimidating to be among this debris, and you see littered debris scattered throughout this region, bent metal, begging the question, can we safely live by the surf?
It's becoming harder and harder to ignore the threat. And we didn't really think we would get a hurricane that strong, and then here we go. It came. It could happen anywhere along the U.S. coastline. And when you factor in sea level rise is happening outside of hurricane, just due to climate change, it's going to become ever increasingly hazardous and a bigger risk. People will still take the risk.
There really is no easy answer. The risk is great. There's always a risk when you live near the sand. But experts say it boils down to watching this happen again or changing the destiny of a community by building stronger, safer, hurricane-proof homes. Homes that can withstand extreme hurricanes like Andrew, Katrina, and now Michael. Every hurricane has its own fingerprint. One that years from now, people will remember where they were and what they were doing when it hit. Michael leaves behind many, but among the death, destruction, and heartbreak, there's always hope. The Panhandle will rebuild, better, stronger, and with more resolve than ever. A line from a famous movie seems to say it best. Just give hope a chance to float up, and it will too. And sometimes you find that hope among the stars. On special assignment in the Florida Panhandle, I'm meteorologist Leslie Hudson for My Radar.